Hello everyone, this is Deathguard Dave for Disgustingly Resilient, and this is episode 2 of Profiles of Decay. Glad the last one seemed to go down well on Predators. I hope everyone got something out of it. So this week, we're going to be talking about this little guy, the Malignant Plaguecaster. Let's get into it. So talking about dimensions on these guys is a little bit less relevant than it is when talking about something like a Predator. He is on a standard 30mm base. And from an actual character perspective, I think there's some interesting things going on, like the protrusion in the model of the kind of pestilential flame that's being broadcast out. Now, this could, depending on where you end up positioning him, if you don't do it properly, could make him stick out. It could make it easier for someone to go, I've got a slight line of sight onto that. But, apart from that, things to say about the model is I think it's really well detailed. I love his gnarled stick, like the teeth in the chest, the kind of flowing purple locks around his head, the back, the flaring kind of winged cape in the back. The movement's good, so is a step. All in all, a really cool model. And the interesting thing about the Malignant Plaguecaster is, and I don't know if this is 100% fact, but that this was released in Japan and there was another version of it. So I tracked one of these down. My very good buddy, who you can find on Instagram at custodes_in_progress, painted this one for me. It's my good friend Borna, who's a competitor for Custodes, painted this one for me as a gift. Very different kind of model, interesting kind of fly and plague element over the top. These kind of like winged plates at the back. Wouldn't suffer in the same way as the other model does, so it's just a very slight differential on it, but interesting to see the different model availability on these. A couple of other things to consider with the Plaguecaster, if he's inside your unit, is if he's in a Rhino and there's 10 Marines in there and your Malignant Plaguecaster and something else, then think about making sure that if that Rhino's at risk or if it's going to get kind of blown up, that you've got space to get them all out. And think about getting out the Plaguecaster probably into the safer position. Whilst he is a character, unlike some of our other Virions, he can actually smack in combat. He's actually got a D3 damage weapon. We'll get into that when we look at the data sheets. So think about when you're disembarking out of a Rhino, where you're going to end up. The other thing to consider is, does the enemy have any sniping capabilities to kill characters? So you might want to get the Plague Marines out in a way that gets them onto a point, but you might want to leave the Plaguecaster behind a wall, just so that the enemy doesn't have line of sight to get that killing shot on him. He's also, but if you are going into melee, I would also recommend that you probably think about getting him into fight. So usually, if I've got a Biologus or a Foul Blight Spawn, when it comes to moving the models into base-to-base contact and getting those two rows to fight, they're never a consideration for making sure they can fight. They're always the ones at the end. But the Plaguecaster, you actually do want to get to hit, and we'll talk about that on the data sheets, as I just said. So let's have a look at the Malignant Plaguecaster. Move 5, pretty standard for Death Guard. In fact, probably makes him one of our fastest moving units. T5, like the other Plague Marines, 3 up save, 4 wounds rather than 2 that we would get on a Plague Marine, 6 up leadership, which is pretty easy to get, and he is only OC1. Now, there's no invuln here. So, for those of you that are Death Guard regulars, you know that our smaller characters like these guys don't get them. Some other units of this kind of similar size in some other armies might do, but not here. So just remember that when you're getting into combat, or you're at risk of kind of the Marines getting run over and these guys being left. In terms of ranged weapons, though, he's got a 12-inch pistol. Good because he can shoot into combat. Really useful. It has got lethal hits. It hits on a 3. It's only one shot. It is only strength 4 and it's 1 damage, but it can help when needed. But the big bit is the Witchfire. So we've got Plague Wind, which is both psychic and torrent. So we're auto hitting, and it comes in a hazardous and non-hazardous flamer version. The non-hazardous is D6. Obviously, it automatically hits. It's strength 4, but even in strength T5, you are going to be probably reducing its toughness. It is -1 AP. If you've got your -1 save contagion on, that could go to -2, and it's D3 damage. So really, really good. Averaging 2 wounds, pretty decent. So a very punchy flamer. When we step it up to hazardous, it's D6 +3. So another solid 3 on top. It goes to strength 6. goes to AP2, which could become AP3 with the sickness. And once again, it's D3 damage. This can do some serious work. So having one of these in a squad is really important. You can even run them solo. They can actually tend to be really kind of quite powerful on that front. And also, if you've got one of these in a squad and it's inside a Rhino, you can use the firing deck and then put that out. So if this guy is accompanied also in a squad by something else that can join, even if there's a leader attached, like a Foul Blight Spawn, then you've got 2 flamers out the top. If you've got a Plague Spewer in the squad, you've got another flamer out the top. So, a really nice option. In melee, he's also not bad. He gets 4 attacks. He hits on 3s. It's strength 6, which is actually pretty good for this guy, considering he's hitting with this gnarled rod. It's AP1 natively, but in combat, if with sickness, you can be AP2. And it's D3 damage again. So that's why I was saying earlier, get him, make sure he's in a row to fight, because he'll actually end up doing more damage than some of your Plague Marines. He is a leader, so you can attach him to the squad. Therefore, the only other characters you could attach to the squad would be something whose datasheet says can be attached to a squad if it's already being led, like a Foul Blight Spawn or like a Biologus. And then he comes with some other great stuff as well. So if we look at his Gift of Contagion, so in the shooting phase, you can select one enemy unit within 18 and visible to the Psyker, roll a d6. On a roll of a 1, you're going to take d3, but on a 2 up, until your next shooting phase, each time a model in the enemy unit makes a melee attack, subtract 1 from the wound roll. So basically, if you've got someone that you're going to be about to be fighting, you can make them -1 to wound. That's massive, especially if you couple that with -1 to hit, or as in ballistic skill and weapon skill, and then you drop this on them. That's this is where we start to get into this kind of real debilitating area of the game. And Don Hooson said actually in the members Discord that, and he's right, that we are malignant, not durable now, and this is just yet another example of a way we can do that. The other thing is that in the shooting phase, after we've shot, and one or more of those attacks made with Plague Wind scores a wound, so you have to actually get wounds away against an infantry-only unit. Then until the start of your next turn, subtract 2 from the move, subtract 2 from the advance and charge rolls made for that unit. So you're in the shooting phase, you could hit something with the Witchfire. You can make them -2 to move, advance, and charge. That could stop them even getting into combat with you. And then if they do, on a 2 up as well to that same unit through the Gift of Contagion above, then they could be -1 to wound. And you could be making them -1 weapon skill. It's a really, really mean package, especially if you've then, kind of on top of that got a fights first in the squad or something like that. Like this kind of will snowball together. I think actually revisiting this character, I've probably not used it enough. If we go to the back page of the data sheet, then all we look at here is that he can only be attached to Plague Marines and what he's equipped with. So just from a leader point of view, note that he can be attached to a Plague Marine unit. It doesn't say that he can be attached to a unit that's already got a leader attached to it, like a Foul Blight Spawn or a Biologus. That meaning you can't put 2 of these in the same squad, which would be absolutely unreal, and we'd all be doing it. So, in the wrap-up, what am I thinking? I'm thinking that I probably need to be paying more attention to these little guys. They're hyper-effective. They're more debilitating than I think we kind of have overlooked them in lists. I mean, I haven't seen them in many lists kicking around. I certainly am looking at building something that's as debilitating as possible. So anything that's across even allies, probably more like a ground team one, where I can do more -1 toughness, where I can do -6 to movement, where I can do -1 damage with like the Terminator Sorcerer, where we can, by characters being led, we can make them -1 to wound. We can, already use our sickness to make things -1 ballistic skill, -1 weapon skill. Looking at kind of rounding that all up, but aside from that list, I'm kind of thinking on what I think we should be doing with these guys is taking more of them, get them out of club nights, practice them with your friends, and see if they can work their way back into competitive lists. Because actually, I think with things like Custodies back on the rise and wanting to get into combat with us quicker, someone like this, like a relatively cheap pointed model, can stop that happening, as well as then making them worse to hit on the wound. Anyway, that's a wrap up. This has been Death God Dave for Disgustingly Resilient, and that was Plaguecaster.